Because of the success of the first film, Morgan Creek Entertainment Group gave lead actor Jim Carrey the power to decide the director on this one. In April 1995, Carrey had DiCercio replaced with Steve Odekirk, who had worked on the film's predecessor as a script consultant and wrote the screenplay for this film, but had no previous experience with directing feature films. But he would get his chance in this 1995 film, Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls.
I'll have you know I have the reflexes of a cat and the speed of a mongoose. Throw it. I dare ya.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Alrighty then. Join us here on Chills and Thrills for the second film with Ace Ventura. And if you don't, Chris says you're a Lahu Hazur. So we are doing Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, here today. And again, Connor here along with Chris. So Chris, I know you said you hadn't watched this movie in a very long time since you were a kid. So what did you think of it on the rewatch?
Yeah, it was like I had just watched it again yesterday. When you have something like that, it's almost like muscle memory for with movies. A lot of these films from the VHS days in the 90s, it was a rotation of Terminator 2, The Lion King, Batman Returns, Star Wars, the original Power Rangers movie, The Lion King, these Ace Ventura movies, Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison. It was always just a rotation of these VHSs. And so yeah, so this one was watched many, many times. And even though it's possibly been close to 20 years since I've really sat down and watched this movie, and it's like I just watched it yesterday. It was a wild experience.
It's one of those things like, over time, the song lyrics and whatnot, things like that, that just stay in the back of your head, that you're on Spotify or YouTube or whatever, and you hear these song lyrics, or you hear a song come on and you haven't heard it in 10 years and you can just rattle off the lyrics. That's kind of how I was with this movie, like rattling off like the joke, like one-liners from Jim Carrey in this. And I had a blast. I can't believe, same with the first one. I hadn't watched the first one in so long, and I hadn't, watched this second one in just as long. And watching the first one for our episode, I had a blast. Watching this one for this episode, I had a blast. And I watched it multiple times, as I always do, because when my first time watching, I'm just like, I'm locked into the film, so I'm not paying attention to like favorite scene or picking out like like favorite dialogue. So I always watch it again to pay a little bit more attention to specific things. And this, man, this film is just as much fun as the first one, if not more fun, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was kind of similar to. I remember when I was in high school, I hadn't watched the original Jurassic Park in a long time, probably not 10 years, but probably close to 5 or 6 years. And we had one of those standardized test days, and then afterward they pop in a movie to keep you entertained because you're in the same room all day basically. And we had Jurassic Park, and it was on, I mean, I'll save this story, but when you watch a movie, it's like you remember the movie, but as a kid, so much of it flies over your head. You don't really like you're understanding it, you're hearing it, but it's not really clicking, like it's not registering. So then when you rewatch that movie as an adult, it's like, yeah, I remember every single thing about this, but like I didn't really get it as a kid. And it's really a surreal kind of experience where it's like, yeah, I know everything in this movie, but I didn't really understand it. So it was very fun for that.
Absolutely. There were a lot of, with both of these films, there were a lot of jokes as a kid that kind of went over my head. And like I hadn't watched this movie in probably just as long as you, 15, 20 years or so. I've seen clips of it on Facebook or YouTube, and you watch like the little 2-minute clips of it, but I hadn't sat down and watched the entire film in forever. And you forget how much like inappropriate little like banter and stuff from Jim Carrey or like jokes there are in these two films that would go over a kid's head, but like their parents would laugh. So you're looking at your parents like, I don't understand why that's funny. And after you grow up a little bit, you're like, okay, that's what my parents were laughing at. And
Yeah.
like 8 out of 10 times, it's like it's something hilarious that you just don't understand till you're a little older.
Yeah, when you're a kid, the stuff that lands is all of the kind of physical humor and the physical gags, which Jim Carrey's excellent as. But then as you get older, you're like, oh, he's just like in the first film, he imitates, William Shatner as Captain Kirk, and then in this one he imitates him, with the there's something on the wing. He's imitating Shatner from a Twilight Zone episode. And like you don't register that or get that as a kid, but it's like I saw that him doing that impersonation before I ever knew about William Shatner's acting style or that episode of the Twilight Zone. When he was referencing the music from Mission Impossible in the first movie, that was before the first Mission Impossible movie came out. That was just a reference to the show. But growing up, I only knew the movie. So then I see that and it's a reference. Things like that are, when he's faking him out and he's going Shawshank Redemption, Chicago. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, and it's like it puts phrases like Shawshank Redemption in your brain before oh, that's the name of a movie and it's a reference to a movie. It's just this weird cultural thing where it's like reverse culture, where you're getting the references before you even know about or discover the source, and it's a weird thing that it does to your brain, and it's just really fun.
Well, you helped me learn something today. I didn't know that the quote, "There's something on the wing." I didn't know what that was from. So that
Yeah,
went over
yeah,
to my
yeah.
head
It's
to this
yeah, it's
day.
from Shatner in an episode of the Twilight Zone where he keeps seeing like a guy out on the wing of a plane, and like they're not believing him, and like he's that he thinks he's going crazy, or he's wondering if it's real, if he's hallucinating it.
Well, I think that part gives me a good laugh every time. So now that I know where it's from, I've always just thought that was, Ace
Him being
Ventura or
funny.
Jim Carrey being goofy. So
Yeah, no, it's a double up on the Shatner impersonation. The first one was Captain Kirk.
I should have known that because with these films, there's always something that Jim Carrey's impersonating or taking from an episode of something or another film that they're making fun of. So I
Oh,
guess
I'm sure
I
that
should have known.
I'm sure there's plenty that I don't catch or that I'm not even still aware of, and that just seems like him being funny or weird. But I noticed some of them.
Absolutely. Let me give you some background and history on the making and whatnot of Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, also known as Ace Ventura 2: When Nature Calls in other areas, is a 1995 American detective comedy film and the sequel to the first Ace Ventura pet detective film from 1994. Jim Carrey reprises his role as the title character Ace Ventura, a detective who specializes in retrieval of tame and captive animals that have escaped, who has been summoned to Africa to locate a missing or stolen bat. Ian McNeice, Simon Callow, and Sophie Okonedo co-star. Tommy Davidson, who co-starred with Carrey on the show In Living Color, makes a supporting role appearance in the film as well. The film was written and directed by Carrey's close friend Steve Odekirk, who had also collaborated in the production as a character consultant in the first film. The film was produced by Morgan Creek Entertainment and was released on November 10th, 1995 by Warner Bros., but unlike the previous installment, it received mainly negative reviews from critics despite being financially successful. So, there's a little background on the film.
Yeah, my hot take, because as a kid, I remember that I always wanted to watch this one instead of the first one. It was very rare when me and my brother were picking a movie out that it seemed like we went back to the first one. It felt like we watched this one all the time. And so when I was rewatching them, I was thinking it was going to be a textbook scenario of like, well, I might have watched this one more as a kid, but the first one's definitely the better movie. But I've got to say, I definitely think that the sequel is the better movie, the funnier movie than the first one. It goes a little more absurdist, and it takes him out of sort of normal society and solving a normal sort of mystery and puts him into this completely, foreign setting. So he gets to be a little bit more cartoony and wacky. He's in a little bit more of a not a fantasy setting, but a bit more of like an exotic, removed from society, you know, adventure in a bubble kind of setting. And I think it only plays into the absurd kind of humor that Ace Ventura is tailored to. And so I think it makes the whole thing a bit more amplified and a bit more over the top, which maybe some people won't like, but I think it's perfect for making a funnier movie.
I remember liking this one more as a kid as well. I was always a kid that was into nature and, any type of animal movie, or like, if we can get a crocodile in a movie or some gorillas, or, he's looking for the bat in this film. So I do like that they took it to Africa, and, he's like kind of out of his like normal element where he's in the city and whatnot. But I do, even like you said, to even now, I think that I like this one more. I think I enjoy this one more. I think I laugh harder at this one more on my rewatches. And I don't know, there's just something about the way, I think Jim Carrey himself turned it up a notch in this one with like his like goofy demeanor. And I do like this one. I like the first one a lot, but I definitely think I agree with you, and I like this one more.
Yeah, and you can tell that they clearly kind of just let him cut loose, after the first one was a hit. And I mean, they got this thing out the next year. The first one was in early of 94, and this came out late 95. So you're really talking, I think the first one was January 94, and this is November 95. So yeah, that's almost 2 years. It's 2 months shy of 2 years, and it could have easily just been 2 years. They could have had it come out in January of 96, but to get it out that fast really says something about the reception of the first one and how quick they wanted this one. And it seems like Jim Carrey really kind of cut loose on this one. Yeah, it's just a really, really fun, entertaining movie. It's hard not to laugh at. It's impossible not to laugh at certain scenes and sequences. And it's shocking that Jim Carrey never did a third film. Now that we're talking about it, it's kind of shocking that by the 2000s, there wasn't an Ace Ventura 3. This feels like the kind of thing that could have been a franchise. I don't know. They could have done 3 or 4 or 5 wild movies with Ace Ventura on this other wild adventure and that other wild adventure.
Well, he was quoted saying after this film's release that he had zero interest in doing a second Ace Ventura film. And early on after the release of this was up until, I believe, like the mid 2000s, this was one of his biggest regrets when it comes to films that he had done.
What, that he had done a sequel to Ace Ventura?
Yes.
Wow, geez, that's wild. Yeah, I believe he never did a sequel ever again until the Sonic movies, because generally after that, he pretty much never did sequels. I don't know anything about the experience, because the final result of the movie, I think, is certainly hilarious, and it was a hit, and all that stuff. So it's like, I would love, if there's a little bit more detail into that. Like maybe he just found it very repetitive to be the same character twice. Maybe he didn't find it creatively freeing. Maybe he was feeling pressure to repeat a lot of the same gags because that movie had become iconic. You don't know what the process might have been like that really soured him on it. But I think the final product is great. I think it's a better movie than the first one. Certainly a funnier comedy than the first one. We can argue about like the legitimacy of all the screenplay in and outs, but in terms of a comedy, it is a funnier movie than the first movie, I think.
Absolutely. When it comes to Carrey doing sequels, I did have a fun fact about that, so I will save that for fun facts. It's just a small one, but I will get us into a trailer for Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. We'll get a plot synopsis read off, and then we will get into those fun facts and numbers and everything that we normally get into on the films.
Sounds good.
In the deepest jungles of Africa, 2 tribes will fight a savage war unless a sacred animal god is found. So they're sending for the only man who can help. Jim Carrey is Ace Ventura, pet detective. Now,
Perhaps we should slow down. Nonsense, poopy pants.
he will embark on a delicate mission. to help a people untouched by civilization.
They did not know about disease until the white man came. I am fighting something.
Blind to fear and immune to pain.
Throw it. I dare you.
He'll gain the respect of the tribe. Discover the animal within. And answer when nature calls. On November 10th.
Nobody wants to play with me.
Ace Ventura is in Africa.
I'm alive. I'm alive. Say uncle. Say uncle.
And Africa will never be the same. Jim Carrey.
Do I have something in my teeth?
Ace Ventura, when nature calls.
Say hello to my stinky little friend.
After failing to save a raccoon from falling to its death, Ace Ventura becomes depressed and joins a monastery. He is approached by Fulton Greenwall about a job. The monastery's abbot, desperate to be rid of Ace's antics, tells Ace he has achieved enlightenment and should leave with Fulton. Greenwall wants Ventura to find the sacred white bat, Shikaka. Ace arrives in Nibia and meets the consul Vincent Cadby. Ace begins his investigation, but must overcome his fear of bats. He eventually befriends the tribe's princess, who tries to seduce Ace. Ace admits his oath to clerical celibacy. Ace also befriends the prince, who assists Ace. Ace's investigation involves eliminating suspects and enduring the escalating threats between the Wachati and the Wachutu. Ace suspects the medicine man of the Wachutu of taking the bat, attempts to infiltrate the Wachutu village, but is immediately captured. The Wachutu believe Ace as the White Devil, and they are convinced he wants to fight them and have him go through many challenges to gain their trust. He passes them all, and his final challenge is a circle of death fight with their toughest warrior, who defeats Ace. Despite losing, Ace's comical antics entertain the Wachutu, and they release Ace and Oda, but warn them war will be tomorrow at noon. As he departs the Wachutu village, the Wachutu shoot Ace one final time with a dart for laughs. Ace suddenly realizes a tranquilizer dart he was shot with earlier is not the same as the Wachutu's darts, and was carved from a akala. This leads him to find two poachers with the bat. They tranquilize Ace and tie him to a raft, which is sent over a waterfall. Ace survives and continues to investigate how the poachers are involved with the war between the tribes. Ace consults the abbot via spiritual projection. With the abbot's help, Ace deduces that Cadby has taken the bat in order to turn the tribes against each other, so that Cadby can seize control of the lucrative market for guano. When Ace confronts Cadby about his suspicions, Cadby confesses to the plot, explaining that he hired Ace as an alibi. The local law enforcement is loyal to Cadby, and Ace is arrested. Ace summons various animals to facilitate his escape and subsequent attack on Cadby's mansion. Cadby tries to shoot Ace, but is stopped by Greenwall. Cadby escapes with the bat in a rover, but Ace follows him in a monster truck, eventually overtaking him and destroying his car. Ace returns the bat just as the tribes are about to fight each other on the battlefield. Cadby is noticed by Oda, who calls him the devil and incites both tribes to pursue him. Cadby is able to escape them, but then encounters a gorilla who mistakes him for a mate. The Wachati princess is married to the Wachutu prince, who is revealed to be the warrior who defeated Ace during the Circle of Death challenge earlier. It is discovered that the bride is no longer a virgin on Ace's account. Peace between the tribes is still achieved when the two tribes join together and chase after Ace.
Very well read, my good sir. Oh, that's a... She is no longer a virgin on Ace's account.
Very well said. Yeah, there was a typo in there I had to correct.
Yeah, it's not always easy reading those bad boys.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I know we bring it up all the time, but do you remember the Mega Gear synopsis that spent like 3 paragraphs describing one scene?
Yes.
It felt like a joke was being played on me. I'm like, it just keeps going talking about this one scene in a 100-minute movie.
And it was so bad that I wanted you to read that one, so I didn't have to. So you blame me
Yeah.
for making you
Yeah,
stick with
yeah,
that one.
sure. I did. Yeah, you did some pre gaming, I guess, and looked into it. It was funny because as I was reading, I didn't pre-read it, so as I was reading it, I'm realizing like, oh, this is just more and more about
Yeah, this
this
is still
scene. It's like,
going.
what the fuck is going on here?
I I heard you try to hold back a laugh on that one when they were talking about Pink over the
Yeah,
waterfall.
yeah, yeah. I guess, yeah, I couldn't help it. I was thinking about it. It's like, yeah, they did send him over a waterfall. Yeah, yeah, that was great. That was great. You know,
Oh, well, how about I get into some numbers here for you?
sure thing.
All right.
You've got to, sorry, off topic one last time. You've got to cut together like a bloopers episode or something to put out as a special one week. Just the times we're joking and jaw jacking and making mistakes. You gotta put that compilation together.
Oh, that whole little skit right there, I thought about leaving in.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, you leave in what you want, man. I mean, it's
So
all good.
people
It's
can
all it's
see that
all
we do actually have fun on here.
yeah.
It's not all
Yeah, it's
business.
yeah, it's all our personalities. That's fine by
Yeah.
me.
Talking about Ace, we got a couple different personalities ourselves.
Exactly.
All right, I'll hit you with some numbers. Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls had a budget of $30 million and a box office return of $212.4 million, which, of course, Chris has our inflation numbers for those.
Yeah, so here in 2025, that would be like dropping a budget of about a 62.9 million on a film and getting a 445 million box office return, which is kind of crazy to think about. I don't know what the last noteworthy sort of pure comedy that was released in theaters was, that was just a sort of mid-budget comedy, like some, imagine dropping some Seth Rogen movie or some Jonah Hill comedy like Superbad or something like that, and then making basically $500 million at the worldwide box office from it. That's not typical. That's not usual.
Yeah, it's almost hard. Like, with those kind of numbers, it's hard to think that they didn't convince Jim Carrey to come back for a third film, a year or two later.
Yeah, or even a few years later, not give him some kind of sweetheart deal of like, hey, anything you want, whatever you want, like this, like the scene from Jurassic Park 3. I can write all kinds of zeros on this check, like something like that. But
So, something about sequels, he did not like to do them, and I will get into that with a
yeah,
fun fact here in a little bit.
yeah, and so I just personally have to thank and praise him for doing 3 Sonic movies. Then that really, because it really is like his performance is really like a cinematic sort of blessing to have 3 times in those films. It was so good in the first one, and then it seemed so certain that he wasn't going to come back after the second one, and then the third one he tops himself again, and it's just phenomenal and a perfect send off. So it's like, I'm so happy that like we got to get like a trilogy of Jim Carrey performances out of him.
Well, maybe one day they'll finish the trilogy and we'll get a old man Ace Ventura.
Oh my gosh, it could be a pair. I mean, because they parody a lot of movies in these films. So like, you could absolutely parody the same kind of energy that like when they did the fourth Indiana Jones movie, or they do Top Gun Maverick 30 years later. The Lega sequels, as they call them, when they bring the franchise back after like 20 or 30 years. You could absolutely parody that and have him be old and lean into it, and it could just be really funny. I feel like it would be an easy movie to make.
This year is 30 years on this film.
Oh my goodness, yeah. They missed the 30 on the first film, but that's okay. I mean, yeah, a 30-year-old movie and it's still making us laugh. Fantastic.
Absolutely. I'll continue with some numbers here. Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls has a 6.4 out of 10 rating on IMDb, 21% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 43% rating on 43% rating on Metacritic, but 84% of our Google users liked this film.
Yeah, Google users know what's up.
I
Until
mean,
they don't. until they don't.
Right. The first one was kind of killed by critics too. It only had a 47% on Rotten Tomatoes and
Yeah,
37 on Metacritic, but
it just like horror, it's easy to find comedies, especially that that are on the edgier side that critics will kind of trash. And and like I said, the first one has some elements to it that modern audiences and modern critics would probably be very sensitive to and offended by. But this movie avoids most of that.
well, America, quit being so sensitive.
Yeah, I know. That's only it's that's only
Or
been the mantra
world,
for like
whatever it
the
may be.
last 20 years. Everyone getting offended by everything.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine what a third Ace Ventura film would have to go through to get released. What kind of
Yeah, and
jokes
that's
we would
probably the
have.
sad thing is in today's day and age, they probably would force it to be extremely watered down and lame. So maybe he's right. Maybe we don't want that third movie.
Well, this is my last number for you. This one, I found two different answers for this one, and it was what Jim Carrey was paid for this second film. I found
Mm.
that he was paid on a couple different sites. They said $10 million or a third of the budget, and then a couple of different websites said 15 million and exactly half the budget of the 30
Hmm.
million. So I'm not sure which one it is 100%. So I thought I would mention both.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Wikipedia says 10, and perhaps, maybe there's a discrepancy because perhaps it was 10 million with some kind of percentage points from the box office returns. So maybe that upped him. Maybe he got some back end, so it made it to 15 or something like that. But it's more of the fact that it's a third of the budget that's more shocking. Like that's pretty wild for any actor to command a third of the production budget of a film. So that's pretty impressive. I mean, I know once you get to some of the later Avengers movie, where RDJ was commanding a big chunk of the budget, but he was also getting percentage points on the box office, so it's a different deal. He's getting paid based on how huge the movie is, but still, that's still impressive.
Well, for the first film, again, he was paid $450,000 of a $15 million budget, and then you're up to
Golly, yeah, you
10 or 15 million in this
you
film.
up me to well, yeah. After his 1994 run, yeah, you up me to yeah, up him to 10 million for the sequel. Good golly, I'd come back for the third one.
Well, yeah, because they're
you
probably
know,
going to offer you 20 to 30,
but
25.
but I'm also one of those that I'm like, well, dang, if I get one $10 million payday, I'm not really fighting to get more. Like 10 million is more than enough, Like I'm like, I don't need it. I can retire, do my one hit wonder, and then live off the interest.
That is exactly all I need is a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, yeah.
One of our episodes to blow up massive.
Just got to go viral one good time.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I have for you for numbers. I will dig into some fun facts as always. My first one for you here is when driving to the consulate for the first time, Jim Carrey forgot his lines in the film, so instead started singing the theme from the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And both actors stayed in character, and the director loved it, so they kept it in the film.
Yeah, another reference that you don't know it's a reference when you watch this film when you're so young.
Yeah, I just like how I forgot my lines, let me improvise, and it ends up being kept in the film. What
Yeah.
was that original line? Like, was it a bland line? Was it a joke
Yeah, was
line?
he
What?
was he yeah, was he monologuing about something? You don't know, but I've got a bit of fun trivia to share.
Throw it at me.
Yeah, so it's not really the type that you don't normally share, so I don't think I'm stepping on your toes. Steve Odekirk, who directed this film, for other absurdist comedy aficionados, if you have ever seen the movie Kung Pao Enter the Fist, Steve Odekirk is the star and director of that movie, and it's this great sort of martial arts parody movie where they take footage from old martial arts films and they digitally composite in Steve Odekirk as a main American actor, and they make this like absurd parody spoof movie out of actual footage of the old martial arts movie with a new actor composited in. It's one of the most ridiculous movies ever, and some of the jokes have aged horribly, but some of the jokes have aged like a fine wine. So just a bit of trivia there.
I can't guarantee it, but I believe I've seen that when I was a little bit younger. And
Hmm.
if I'm thinking of the movie you're talking about, yes, it's absolutely like a dumb, terrible but funny movie.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's a stupid scene where like there's a baby doing kung fu and then he fights a cow, and those are the parts that haven't aged well. But there's also a lot of really, really great jokes in that movie. I won't divert us completely, but there's a great line where he's like, we've trained him wrong on purpose as a joke. Things like that is like it's like that just holds up.
As soon as you said the baby fighting the cow, I have absolutely seen that movie.
Yeah.
Good little funny film. Oh, my next one for you here. You probably know this one, but the opening scene where Ace tries to save the raccoon is a spoof of the opening scene of Cliffhanger from 1993, starring Sylvester Stallone.
Yes, and I absolutely saw this movie before I ever saw Cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone.
I 100% did too.
Yeah. So it's just one of those great things. And I mean, as a kid, that scene where he loses the raccoon was like very distressing for me to watch as a kid. Like it really like I was not like an emotional kid. It didn't like make me cry or anything, but it was always like you feel bad for animals, and it's like that's one of like a very, as far as how young I was, like that's probably a very early overt time where like an animal just like died in a movie, and it wasn't like, oh, it got hurt, but then it was okay. It was like, no, like the animal straight up like falls off a cliff, and it's like it's funny and it's absurd, but like when you're a kid, you take everything a little more seriously. You're playing it straight, so it's like they're playing it straight in a comedic way, but as a kid, it just feels as dramatic as they're making fun of it for being. So you're like, oh my gosh, he's dropping the raccoon, and then he drops it. It's like screaming all the way down. It's like, oh my goodness, it's like it's a very intense scene when you're a little guy.
That scene to the, on my most recent rewatch kind of like had me at like high intensity, and I knew what was going to happen. And I was just like, I don't even want to watch because it's just,
Yeah,
I'm an animal lover. It just makes me sad.
I even think there were a few times where I think as a kid, I think I would fast forward that scene. I think when I was a little guy, I didn't like to watch it even, like it was one of those things where I was just like, no, I don't want to watch the raccoon die, like it's just one of those things.
No, because you think, all right, he saved this raccoon, and then you start to see it break, and it's like, he's Ace Ventura. The raccoon's not going to die. He's going to save it. And then it's like, oh, I was absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
And then
he
he goes into a slumber for years over this.
Yeah. And it's like, my whole big thing with any animals or creatures or what have you is like, to me, it always is like, they don't understand fully what's happening. So like when they're in mortal danger, they might not even fully comprehend like why they're being hurt or why they're in mortal danger or something like that. So it's just like much more tragic because it's just like, it just strikes me as like they're very distressed and confused. And so it's like that just makes it seem a bit more like messed up whenever they die or get hurt or beat or shot or whatever, like that's just the way my brain works. So I'm always like, man, that sucks, like poor animal. It's not even smart enough to really understand.
I'm that way with dogs in horror movies. As soon as a dog gets killed by somebody or something, I'm pissed off the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
I won't go too far out. I'll get back to these for you. Here is my sequel fun fact for you. It's up until Dumb and Dumber 2 in 2014. This was the only sequel to a Jim Carrey film to actually feature Jim Carrey.
Yeah, that's I'd honestly forgotten about Dumb and Dumber 2. I'd honestly forgotten about that. I mean, and it wasn't as bad as it could have been, I suppose. I mean, it was better than what Dumb and Dumber the prequel, but yeah, it's kind of wild. It's kind of wild, that they did that. And that was the whole like 20 years later thing, So he did it once with Dumb and Dumber, but I think the ship is here's what I need to do. If I want to see Ace Ventura 3, I just need to say, I think that ship has sailed and we're not going to get Ace Ventura 3 on this podcast. And then after we get done recording, they will announce it tomorrow morning,
Oh, hashtag Happy Death Day 3 or Happy Death Day to Us that we just talked about.
If we're just manifesting sequels, I got a lot. I'm going to do one per episode if that's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Freddy versus Jason 2.
with Ash or Michael Myers or whoever we got,
Any of them, or a sequel to the 2009 movie. For the love of the Lord, give us that reboot sequel. At this point, they might as well do another reboot, But whatever.
Jim Carrey improvised the part when Ace Ventura sneezes in front of the Wachati tribe in this film.
That's perfect. That's great. It's a very well timed joke. They didn't know anything about disease until the white man came. Achoo! Just like freaking them out. It's like that's so good.
And this is why he has become a huge star. Little things like that, I'm sure, add to it.
Yeah, he knows. Like he can make a joke out of the delivery of a line. He can make a joke out of the line itself. He can make a joke out of a physical bit of comedy, and he can just make a joke out of like something, uh, off the cuff and improvised and just timed well. He's a comedic talent all around.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely one of the best to do it.
Yeah, and he's at the height of his powers here in the mid-90s.
Absolutely. My next one for you here is the Farrelly brothers, who had already made Dumb and Dumber from 1994 with Jim Carrey, were offered the chance to direct this film, but declined, feeling that they were the wrong people for the film.
I mean, that may be true. I can't argue with their logic there, but at the same time, I'm thinking like they're strong collaborators with Jim Carrey, so it's like you like to think that it would have been a pretty good situation, But I mean, neither here nor there. It is what it is,
Yep, just a fun fact I'm throwing out there. I like Dumb and Dumber, so
I know
we always like to think about what could have been. It's always fun.
Yeah, not that they have this like that. There's this like, oh, a Farrelly Brothers film has this such specific style to it. It's not that it's necessarily that, but it just would have been, to see Jim Carrey collaborate with some directors that he clearly had a very strong collaboration with on another movie. But I mean, honestly, you look at all these movies and it's like, well, maybe Jim Carrey's just good. Maybe it didn't matter because it's like a lot of these movies from the 90s were directed by different people and he's firing on all cylinders in each movie. So, maybe it's not like, oh, we lost something great because it could have been him and the Farrelly brothers again. It's like, well, like Jim Carrey was kind of rocking it no matter who was directing it. And I think you said that Steve Odekirk was apparently a friend of his.
Yeah.
And so I mean, you have to imagine that their collaboration was strong. Again, I'd love to know like the story behind like why. Like it seems like the narrative manifesting here is that Jim Carrey's not so keen on this movie, and I would just love to know. I feel like there's an interview there to discover the truth or something, but maybe who knows.
I'll get into that a little bit before we get out of here.
Oh, okay. So there is some lore. There is some mythology there that we're going to discover. Okay, fair enough.
All right, I got 3 more for you, and this one might take you back to your childhood a little bit. Ace Ventura shares the same hairstyle with another character created by Steve Odekirk in Jimmy Neutron.
Ah, yeah. Jimmy Neutron was not, because I have a brother who's older than me by 4 years, so I sort of like that's just like the perfect age where when I would still have been into some of that quote unquote kiddie stuff, having an older brother that's 4 years older, so like I'm 8, he's 12. He's in that age of like, well, that's kiddie stuff. That's silly kid stuff. So it sort of caused me to kind of mature out of the very childish stuff a little earlier than the average kid might have. So Jimmy Neutron, I saw it, was aware of it, but it was never my like. I missed the boat on Jimmy Neutron very much in the same way that I consider I missed the boat on like SpongeBob. Like those were generations of cartoons that like some of my friends and classmates would have seen and been a fan of, but I kind of wasn't because I was pushed into the Futuramas and the South Parks and the Family Guys at a pretty early age.
Okay. I thought I wasn't sure. I wasn't too big on Jimmy Neutron. I wasn't sure if you would be, but I thought that was a fun little connection when you look at the hairstyles and you're like, yeah, that's pretty good.
It's definitely fun. Definitely fun. Yeah.
This is one of 2 box office hits from that year where Jim Carrey played a character who deals with bats, referencing the other being Batman Forever from 1995.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that quite often. Where like he's got all these ominous lines about fearing bats and this, that, and the other thing, uh, throughout the film. And it's like, yeah, he was doing another movie where he was, Batman Forever. He's all about them bats, So that is a funny coincidence in the same year.
Jim Carrey was quoted saying that he hated that Ace Ventura was afraid of bats in this film. He was pretty much stated that like he's a pet detective and that like he should love and like adore all animals and there isn't one that he should be afraid of. So that was one thing in this film that bothered him.
Gotcha. And that does track. That does make sense. He's this nature guy. So of all things, like he's gonna have like, a pet detective is gonna have a qualm about bats. If anything, he should have had that sort of crocodile hunter kind of vibe to him where it's like he likes all animals and appreciates all animals and doesn't have a problem with any of them. It does feel like kind of like a random plot device. While you're talking about this, I didn't realize that the Jimmy Neutron show came after the series. I wasn't even aware of that. I only ever knew of it as a series. I didn't know that this was a movie that then became a series. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. So that's news to me.
I had to go to I mean sometimes you just got to go to Wikipedia and get that sort of 30-second download of info on something.
Well, my last one for you here is the Wachutu tribe used the term white devil for Ace Ventura, and the term is actually a Chinese ethnic slur for Westerners.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense.
So I just thought I'd throw that one in there for a little shits and giggles.
Yeah. White Devil, that's also what the pretty sure it's what the Ewoks call the stormtroopers in Star Wars. I'm pretty sure I read something about that somewhere. That they're called the White Devils or something like that, like in the Ewok language.
You know more about Star Wars than I do.
Yeah, I know. Maybe I'm fan fictioning here. Maybe I'm just like making stuff up. There's a moment in Return of the Jedi where they're talking about it, and like the Ewok says something in his own language, referring to the stormtroopers. And in my mind, I just always imagine him saying the White Devils. So, I don't know. Maybe I've completely made that up.
That is absolutely all right. I will let you have that one in your brain.
Yeah.
All right, so I absolutely know the question to this, I think, but who is your favorite character?
Yeah, do we need to ask? Of course it's Ace Ventura. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think that goes without saying whose name is on the marquee here,
He's also mine, clearly. He takes it up a notch in this. He's got all the funny quips. He's running around, he's just everything Ace Ventura, Jim Carrey does as Ace Ventura. I mean, you can have other good characters in these films, but you're never gonna pick anyone other than Jim Carrey playing this title character. So Ace Ventura is the guy.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible to come out of these movies and be like, Ace Ventura is great, but like I really loved, the fat British guy. It's like, well, no, like it's not how it works. Like it's a total masterclass performance from him. Even more, dialed up to 11 than the first movie was, and it's fantastic.
Absolutely, 100%. So with that being such a easy pick, this next one might not be. What was your favorite quote or most memorable line from the film, or a couple that you want to give us?
Well, I mean, let me start to quote the whole script here, but so I mean, I'll give a couple. There's a certain exchange on the flight where the flight attendant goes, "Peanut?" He thinks she said penis. And he says, "Thanks, I have one right here. It's bulky, but I consider it carry on." Those kind of jokes don't we don't get a ton of those anymore these days. So that one's really funny. Speaking of the White Devil, the exchange, did you just refer to me as White Devil? That is how they know you. Leave that part out from now on. Like, like he's trying to broker the peace, and he's like, maybe stop calling me White Devil while you're talking to them. And I got to bring it home with, the end of the movie, I think he said she's not a virgin. They can tell that, like that's just like that's a great note to end the movie on, So I mean, if I have to kind of pick my 3 dialogue exchanges, it'd probably be those.
I definitely, my favorite one I went with was the one with the flight attendant that you spoke on, and then I did like when Ace is meeting them, and one of like the warriors kind of screams in his face, and he goes, "You know, gingivitis is the number one, like, is the leading cause of tooth decay."
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
one
that's
gave me a
that's
good laugh because the guy's teeth are they almost look
oh
like the
yeah.
color of like tree bark. They're
Yeah.
terrible.
That's a great one too. I can tell you, growing up saying like a glove was
Yep.
a very common thing amongst my brother and dad, and
What
even like the uh it's not how Ace does it, but when he goes Chicago, when you're a kid, you're always looking for a way to kind of swear without swearing. So instead of saying, shit as a kid, you kind of we would kind of be like Chicago, instead of that. So, so that's a memory too. That's kind of just more how that line would manifest in between my brother and I than the line itself.
that whole scene when he's doing the fake out scene with them, like you spoke on earlier, the Shawshank Redemption and the Chicago, that
Yeah.
whole scene gives me a laugh. There's one more quote that I wanted to mention, and it's when he's getting ready to do battle, and he goes, "I'll have you know I have the reflexes of a cat and the speed of a mongoose. Throw it. I dare you." And then the guy throws it, and the spear just lands right in his leg, like no reflex from Ace at
Yeah.
all. Like
Yeah. Yeah. It's fantastic. And he asked, not to get further into that scene, but he asked for his friend to give him a spear, and his friend throws it at him and it goes in his other leg. And just like the double where he's like, like looking at each leg that's got a spear in it, it's in the bone. It's in the bone. It's like that is like that. I always that scene always stuck in my head. Like if you were to ask me a little kid, like what is that movie? It's like, well, it's that scene where he gets the two spears in his legs.
absolutely. That has to be one of my favorites from the film.
Mm-hmm.
What is
But
your favorite?
is it your favorite scene? Period. Though, do you want to
That is
go first on
absolutely
that?
my favorite scene period. The Wachutu final test, or
Okay.
that that is
Fair enough.
just
It's a strong contender for sure, and it's very good.
yeah, it just the throwing of the spears and them calling him like White Devil, and then like Ace, what the scene ends, and they're like he says that he's like, yeah, I'm all right. I have a high tolerance for pain, and they they blow the little dart or throw the dart at him, and I think it sticks him right in his rear end or his back, and he
Yeah,
screams like a little girl, and that whole scene is just money to me.
yeah, it's a great sequence. If I had to pick my favorite scene outside of that one, it's g- it's got to be the scene where he's in the mechanical rhino. Like that is the other like very very easy to remember scene, and it's even better like in hindsight. He's inside the thing, and then the fan breaks, and I think he has a line where he's like kind of hot in these dinosaurs or something, or kind of hot in these rhinos or something like that, and he's just like, and then it just cuts to him, and he's like soaking, and he's taking off his underwear, and he's just drenched, and then so he pokes out the back, and you have the family that's like, look, the mother rhino is giving birth, and he's like getting the silicone stuck on his mouth. He's like, like it's just like it's so over the top and ridiculous. And me and my brother would imitate some of those noises all the time as kids, like that he makes when he's trying to squeeze out of it. Like it is just so absurd and so funny. It's just like peak physical comedy. Like he's trapped in the overheating rhino and has to just rip his way out of it.
That
It's
is
so
one of
good.
the scenes that's one of the only scenes from this film that I've seen over the years since I haven't watched it, on YouTube or
Yeah,
on
yeah,
Facebook.
yeah, yeah. It's an easy scene to just look up. Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. One of the other ones that made me laugh was he's sitting there and he's shooting spitballs at the guy who's trying to balance.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, because they do it a couple times before they actually cut to it and show what they're
He's
doing.
got like
Like
10
it's so good.
spit
Yeah.
wads on his face.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
He's good. With
Yeah.
my help, he could be the best.
Yes.
Shakes
Yes.
it.
Yes. Yes. It's so perfect. It's so
Absolutely.
perfect.
There's so many little things in this film that will give you a quick little chuckle or a good laugh, and it's just so much fun. There's so many scenes and like quotes and stuff we could go over from these two films.
100%.
This film, though, this film did not have a sequel, and we've talked about this. There have been talks for years about Jim Carrey coming back, and I mean, he did say early on that he was not a fan of this film. He wasn't a fan of doing sequels in particular, but after time had gone on, there were interviews where Jim Carrey himself had stated that he is open to returning as the title character. So as we said before, like
that announcement is coming tomorrow morning on X. On X, it's gonna come. We're gonna hear this.
Yeah, that we said before with Happy Death Day, if we've waited this long, we're probably not gonna get one. And hopefully one day we will get a sequel to this film. But he said that he's open to returning, so we'll see what happens.
I would be all for it, dude. I would be so, I would be apprehensive and fear what modern Hollywood would do to it, but at the same time I'd be like, Jim Carrey's not going to let it suck. Jim Carrey's going to at least make it pretty good,
That would be my only ask, is keep it a raunchy comedy like these first two.
Yeah, what's shocking, like for PG-13, like these are PG-13, but like they managed to be very sort of like they have that sort of vibe of like a raunchy, gross out comedy that you wouldn't really watch with kids, and it's kind of unique to get a movie like that. Like it's a unique little pocket that it exists in.
Yeah, they definitely have moments where they're kind of tiptoeing that line.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Well, I think that is all we have on Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. But again, I mean, this film, as I just said, did not have a sequel. But Ace Ventura, Jim Carrey himself, is open to returning as the title character. But we will stick with the comedy vibe on our next episode, and we'll add a little action into it as well, as we take our first look of 3 Rush Hour films. We will be doing that trilogy, starting with the first Rush Hour film on our next episode. So, Chris, those should be a good time, because those were 3 films that I watched continuously growing up.
Yes, absolutely. And, and it's kind of fun that we're kind of keeping it on the 90s timeline. We had Ace Ventura 94, When Nature Calls 95. The first Rush Hour dropped in 98. So we're kind of progressing through this sort of action comedy timeline here and getting to see kind of cinema evolve a little bit over the course of several movies, which I think is very fun. You're not just doing it over a single franchise, but you're doing it over different movies across genres a little bit. I always have fun with that. So I'm looking forward to talking about the Rush Hour trilogy.
Absolutely, we will. Once we get into them, we'll have to see what one's our favorite, what one, kind of rank the trilogy as we always do. But I think with this one, I think we both stated that we like the sequel for Ace Ventura better than the original.
Yeah, it's a tough list to compile, but in the number 2 spot, I've got Ace Ventura, and in the number 1 spot, I've got When Nature Calls. It's a lot. There's a lot to consider, but I think that's how my list shakes out.
Absolutely in agreement with you. But I mean, I will, before we get out of here, as always, I'll thank you for joining me. We got her done, and we're moving on to the next.
Oh yeah, always a pleasure. Hell or high water, we get these episodes done one way or another.
Absolutely. So thank you. Thanks to anyone who's out there listening to us. We do this for you guys and because it's a blast. So we hope you give us some listens and enjoy it as much as we do. So thanks again. So we got Rush Hour on our next episode, but until next time.
Have a good one.
Shikaka. 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 Shikasha. Shish kebab. Shawshank Redemption. Chicago! You're out of there! Go on. You're gone. Go on. Chicago! Why, oh!